Hey everyone, Mr. Happy here, and in this video, going to be getting out one that I've been wanting to get out for weeks now, but I was sick the week of the media tour, so I didn't get to finish it last week. I got to do a short interview with Naoki Yoshida at the recent media tour. I'm sure you were wondering where this was. Everyone else posted some sort of interview or questions they got to ask Yoshi P, and these are mine. Now, there's about 6 questions and answers here, and some of them were pretty much answered through things like the live letter or through additional questions and answers that have come out of other interviews as well. So, not really great Q&A on my part, I think, but I did my best, so let me just give you what I got, and we'll call it a wrap for this video. So the first question I asked is a reminder of the concept of anima armor, which was the idea that we'd have an armor piece that operates similar to our Zodiac weapon and our anima weapon, where we started from scratch and we build it up over the course of several patches, and it's something that we can modify the stats on and go through a similar process to upgrading as patches come out. With Eureka coming out, it seems like a perfect time. So I just asked him, are we going to see anima armor? Is it something that's, actually planned, or is it still just an idea that was thrown out once? They said it's still under consideration. And keep in mind, these answers are kind of paraphrased. He didn't say these word for word, so please don't quote them. It's still under consideration. They're not going to be doing it at the launch of Stormblood. It's something that they'd be looking to add, if at all, in the patch series that follows. But it's still under discussion, so wait a little while longer while they consider whether or not they want to do the armor. He also added an additional comment that in terms of progressing your weapon, Eureka is going to be quite different from the way that we did it before. So I'm kind of curious. I can't imagine it ultimately being all that different. The major thing I imagine being different is that we're not doing old content, we're doing new content. But with things like the 72-hour respawn Notorious Monsters, something that's a callback to old school MMOs like Final Fantasy XI, I'm curious to see if Eureka actually ends up being its own, unique piece of content and not just feel kind of like the way the Diadem was. So question number 2 is another thing that they mentioned before, and I want an update on it. Jump potions are being added to the game. We call them the job level boost item and the story shortcut item. But I had to ask, Hall of the Intermediate was an idea that came up some time ago, where as players progress to higher levels, they would learn something more than the bare basics they get from the Hall of the Novice, something a little bit more in tune with the job they're actually playing. And I was wondering, with people boosting to level 60, is this something that they are looking to do? Now, the first thing he came back with is something he said before about the job level boost items. In fact, he said it at the live letter. Their data shows that it's mostly veteran players that purchase these kind of items. It was true in the Chinese version and in the Korean version. And you know what? I have seen those items used in similar ways here. Now, that's not to say that new players don't buy these kind of items. It's just less frequent when you're not providing one for free. So for the veteran players, obviously they don't need a Hall of the Intermediate with these job level boost items. That being said, there are players who do purchase them from scratch, and they're hoping that with the upcoming changes to the jobs, with the gauges for the added visibility, and the ease of tracking the amount of buffs and debuffs that you have, they're hoping that it's less necessary, that players are able to pick up the jobs a little bit more easily and don't need something like a Hall of the Intermediate to tell them, hey, you're not doing this correctly. So they're going to watch to see how that actually pans out. And then they're going to determine if Hall of the Intermediate is something that really is necessary. But they want to see how the actual job changes pan out first. So my next question was, okay, this was right after I had seen that they were changing healer DPS to scale with mind as opposed to the way that it worked before. So I brought up a bunch of things. Healers, damage now scales with mind. They don't need to cleric swap anymore. Accuracy is no longer an issue. So I asked them straight up, do you think players are going to have higher expectations of people to DPS as a healer? Because now it's something that's super accessible. And it's not as much of a skill gate as it was before. And he really, really wanted me to reinforce a point here. So much so that he did ask me to add this little section at the end. He said, first of all, we do not expect healers to contribute to DPS. However, we know a lot of cutting-edge players enjoy this aspect about the jobs, and progressing in raids early on use it to help clear the fights. Decided to make it so that the idea was more approachable and less punishing, so if a player does want to try it, they aren't sacrificing all their healing capabilities and their party yells at them like they were with the old cleric stance. He straight up said, I don't like seeing healers doing entire dungeons in cleric stance, especially if they forget to switch back and heal. So that was a big reason why they made the change. But then he asked me, he then said, before we went to the next question, that being said, and I want you to really reinforce this to your viewers, I firmly believe it shouldn't be mandatory, and we do not have the expectation of them to DPS. So he just said, say that to them. I'm going to say it to you, and I know it doesn't change some of your minds or alter the way you think at all. I'm just relaying that message from him to you. So that's the first 3 questions. The next one I had was about Bard, another change that I had just seen when I had gotten to sit down with him. So I was wondering, why remove the cast time mechanic? What was the big decision? Why revert this change that was such a big deal going into Heavensward? And it was a pretty straightforward answer, one that we were specifically told about during live letter number 36. 2 parts. First, a lot of players complained and left the job as soon as they added cast times. It wasn't what they signed up for. And 2, it was because the cast time mechanic was causing Bard to be the job that actually had the widest skill gap and the greatest DPS difference between a less experienced player and a veteran player. So they wanted to make sure that the job feels good in 4.0 and give it a unique identity and playstyle, but the cast times they identified as a key issue and they had to go. But he hopes that everyone's going to enjoy the new Bard. And I'll tell you, from my experiences with it at the Media Tour, I thought it was a lot of fun. Like, it was way more fun than I anticipated it being. So I think those of you who are especially a fan of the 2.0 Bard will probably enjoy it more with the cast times gone and enjoy some of the changes they made to the songs and whatnot. So question number 5. I asked them about job level boost items, but one thing that is pretty rampant whenever they add, like whenever a skip item is added to an MMO, is people, they just think that, that means there's going to be no development in the older stuff, making it easier to level, making it easier to get through the old story quests. So I asked him, the level 46 to 49 gap in Northern Thanalan is still not great. There's a huge number of filler quests in the subsequent 2.x storylines, plus a few other times where I just kind of wish they would pare down the quests. Are there any plans to alleviate these issues for players who decide not to take the shortcut? I personally would love to pare down the quests. This is coming from Yoshi P, especially in the 2.x series. However, it's quite difficult to do for a number of reasons. They're going to help alleviate some of the issues by providing more experience points. It wasn't any more explicit than that, just provide more experience points to players. But for the time being, they're unable to address the issue directly, mostly because of resources. As they approach more and more expansions, though, he suspects they are going to have to just take time and sit down and dedicate resources to consolidate these missions, because yeah, they don't want the jump potion to be 100% mandatory for people who come another 1 or 2 expansions down the line. So they will absolutely have to dedicate resources to that. So please look forward to it. My last question was kind of just an oddball one. World of Warcraft has items called heirlooms, which have a few major functions. You can share them across multiple characters. They have stats that scale with your level. They usually provide some sort of bonus like EXP or something along those lines. It just makes it so that players, when they're leveling alternate jobs, they don't have to think about, oh, I got to replace gear in 3 levels, or it helps speed it up with the extra experience points. And obviously, the multiple character aspect for Final Fantasy XIV isn't as important because you can do everything on one job, but have they considered adding these sort of scaling items that players can collect and use to level their other jobs? And they actually said, yeah. I mean, he initially just went, yes, we're working on things along those lines. We're developing the systems and the mechanics on the back end to make things like this possible for our game. They want to incorporate more experience bonuses, things that are more on those lines for now, and then they're going to develop them into items like heirlooms. There's no time frame. They didn't promise anytime soon or any sort of time frame at all, but they do support the idea and they do want to add items that are like that to give players something that's a little bit more streamlined of a leveling experience. And those are my 6 questions. They weren't anything too spectacular. I kind of had an inkling of a lot of the other questions that were going to be asked. Those of us who attended the event in San Francisco, a lot of us collaborated to make sure there was very little overlapping, and some of these questions I didn't expect to get to ask so many, so I kind of just went, okay, whatever. I just thought of them at the last second. So not the greatest interview from me, but I did have the one not too long ago, and I was happy with that one. So I didn't expect to get one so soon after that last one. But anyway, that's going to be my interview with Naoki Yoshida. I'll include a link to this little write-up right here. Again, these answers are not verbatim. They are paraphrased from him, so do not quote them word for word. A lot of them are my reinterpretations of what was translated and just made a little bit more presentable. But anyway, thank you for watching this video. Be sure to like, favorite, subscribe, and share. And stay tuned because we'll have tons of Stormblood information coming up over the next week and a half as we get towards early access. Thank you for joining me, and until next time, take care.